Chapter 13. The lights flickered, then went out. "Whoa!" Cream laughed. The lab manager shouted for everyone to remain seated until the backup generator kicked in. The few remaining students and teachers made a beeline for the door. "Come on!" Cream grabbed Anna's hand. Claire sensed the two of them leave the room together. "I did it!" The lab manager moved to block the door. Claire thought, "Push!" and shot the electricity back into the socket. Sparks shot out, there was shouting, and a fire alarm was pulled. "Shit, shit, shit!" she cried as she panicked, and fought herself to Anna's side in the parking lot. Students and faculty were trickling out of the school. Anna was okay, but Kareem was opening the passenger side door of an old black Camaro. "No, not the car. Wait, Anna, you just met him." Claire mentally shot herself into the back seat just as the fire trucks came roaring up the hill. She stared in disbelief at the school and tried to remind herself that they did drills all the time. Everyone would be okay. She hadn't meant to make such a mess, but she had to protect her daughter. For a second she wondered if Wendy or Nana were watching, but decided it didn't matter. What's done is done. Just don't screw it up anymore. "Let's get out of here." Cream's knee hit an enormous plastic cup full of soda, ejecting it from the cup holder hanging from the door. He caught it like a pro before he spilled the drop. "Shit, I'm always doing that. It's a 77, no cup holders." He laughed, shook his head, and took a drink before he offered it to Anna. "Where you want to go? Hungry?" She scrunched up her nose, shook her head, and reached for the door handle. "I thought we were just getting in out of the cold. I have to get home. My dad's totally expecting me. He'll get all worried and shit if I'm not home soon," Anna replied, as she adjusted her black pleated skirt. It was riding up, exposing several more inches of her opaque black tights now that she had her backpack between her feet. Claire smiled to herself. Paul wasn't home. She knew Anna had the afternoon free. She's always had good judgment. She's still Anna. So she's alone with the boy. She hasn't had a lobotomy. "Let me drive you then," Kareem answered as he punched the shifter into reverse, backed out of the space, pressed the pedal to the floor, and peeled out of the parking lot. Anna braced herself. "Just tell me where to turn. I don't know all the streets look right yet. Actually, I did manage to find this incredible forest preserve out a ways. It looks just like Iowa. You want to..." "Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to drive to a remote forest preserve with a complete stranger. Hey, let's stop at the gun shop. My treat." Kareem threw his head back and laughed. "Says the Princess of Darkness." Claire could barely stay in the back seat, her frowning face right between them. Her eyes darted from Kareem's to Anna's and back to Kareem's again. "Says the serial killer who travels the world pretending to be the new kid in school." "I have pepper spray," Anna said in a playful tone that surprised Claire. She might as well have said chapstick. "I have duct tape." "I have a flamethrower," Anna replied, lips pursed, eyes staring straight ahead. At that, Kareem laughed so hard he choked on his pop and slapped his hand against the Camaro's dusty dashboard until he'd caught his breath. "Tell me you don't keep it right next to the pepper spray, because that's an accident waiting to happen." "Of course not. I keep it next to my herpes medication." "All right, that's enough. We can stop this any time," Claire shouted over their laughter. "Holy crap, does everybody in Iowa drive as shitty as you?" Anna said, stabbing at the seatbelt mechanism with the metal disc at the end of her seatbelt, breathing a sigh of relief when it finally latched. "Hey, I'm a pro. I learned to drive like this in Lebanon," he declared. Every summer at my Uncle Omar's. "I was born here, though." "Chill, would you? I've been driving since I was 10. Claire was acutely aware they were moving toward the expressway instead of their house. Maniacal driving aside, Kareem seemed to be a halfway decent kid, but she still hoped Anna really did have pepper spray. Kareem wiped the back of his hand across his mouth. He had a stunning smile, teeth so white, one couldn't help but stare. He reached for the stereo and turned up Nickelback. "So?" "Okay, but I have to be home by like 5. My dad took my sister to the dentist, so otherwise I'd have to go straight home to babysit." "Anna Lynn Cummings, this is a bad idea. Use your head." "You know better than this," Claire shouted, trying to shake her daughter's arm, but she was too weak. "Cool, you're going to love it," he said, speeding up again. "So, your mom." Anna leaned her head back against the seat and blew at her bangs. She looked down at her hands, straightened her ring, began picking at her blue-black nail polish. "You really don't have to," he said. "No, it's okay. I can talk about it." "Just slow the hell down, would you?" Okay. He let up on the gas and did a nearly undetectable hair check in the rearview mirror. Claire noticed a bead of sweat trickling down the back of his neck. Her mind was wandering to her first date with Paul, when she heard Anna utter those heart-wrenching words, "My mom." "Are you sure you haven't, seen anything on the news? Claire Cummings, Union Allied Bank?" "Not in Iowa." "Oh, yeah, right. Okay, well, my mom was basically kidnapped on Halloween." "No shit." "Seriously, she, just disappeared. Left her purse, credit cards, everything. Even her car. It's been total hell. I know she's, gone. I can't explain how I know it. I just do." "Don't say that. You shouldn't give up hope. You don't know for sure. People disappear all the time." And to her relief, Claire could see Anna was biting her bottom lip to keep from telling him about the ring. "Keep it between us, girls, Banana. Go with your gut. People won't understand." "Besides," Kareem continued, "if it's been on the news so much, think about how many people are looking for. That's got to be a good thing, right?" He pulled his aviator-style sunglasses from his hair and put them on, as the speedometer approached 85. "Not exactly. I've got this vent in my room where I've been able to hear pretty much everything the cops told my dad. They're looking for her because this woman, this, unbelievably slutty woman she worked with, was friends with, she embezzled a shitload of money, and it was the day before it happened. But there's no way on earth." "No shit." Kareem slowed down for the exit and floored it as soon as he cleared the turn. Anna braced her right foot against the dash and dug her nails into the armrest. "You had to know my mom. Anybody who knew her would know. Anybody who knew her would tell you she was incapable of stealing even the tiniest thing. One time the cashier didn't charge us for those packages of peanuts, the little ones, 2 for $1. Yeah, those. Yeah, right. No, really. We just bought over $200 worth of groceries, and we're about a block from her house, and she has to drive all the way back to the store and tell them. It was insane. Mom always said everything comes back to you 10 times over. There's just no way she could have known anything about the money. She never would have let Julia go through with it. Sometimes I think, that's why she's gone. Maybe she tried to stop her." "That's some heavy shit. What about your dad?" "God, my dad. My dad is going to make it into the Guinness Book of World Records under most interrogated man in history. The stupid asshole cops have been on him like white on rice since day one. It's so unfair. They aren't even looking anywhere else. Or for stupid Julia, I swear. God, it just makes me so mad. That sucks. Totally, but he's all going to work every day at the hospital and everything. Anesthesiologist. I can hear him crying in their room sometimes, though," Anna said in an almost inaudible squeak as she began to cry. Kareem did a double take and fumbled with the glove box latch. He dug around, spilling fuses and screwdrivers onto the floor mat. He handed her a crumpled McDonald's napkin. "It's clean, I swear." "Thanks," she whispered. In the back seat, Claire stared at half a dozen crumpled fast food bags on the floor as she thought about Paul. She hadn't realized the police had focused all their attention on him like that. How will I ever be able to look after all of them at once? "You need to get your mind off all this craziness. Mellow out." Anna sniffled while Kareem fished around in his pocket, driving upwards of 90, one-handed. She reached for the wheel, but he mumbled, "Got it." The sound of a lighter snapped Claire out of her daze. She glanced up to see him lighting a joint. "Damn it, I knew it. Get out of the car, Anna. Make him pull over. Call Dad. Look for a gas station. Make him stop the car," Claire shouted, but as she looked out the window, her heart sank. They were too far out now. Nothing but snow-covered trees and fields staring back at them. The Camaro was flying down the blacktop at 97 miles per hour. Kareem cranked Nickelback and passed the joint to Anna. They drove for a good 15 miles, laughing and singing. Claire continued yelling at them to stop the car. She couldn't help but think of all the times she'd worried Anna might turn to drugs or drinking and subsequently fall in with the wrong crowd trying to deal with her trichotillomania. She never would have imagined she'd be the reason Anna would do something like this, or that she'd be with her when it happened. Claire couldn't remember ever feeling so helpless. And then she saw it. Anna was singing off-key at the top of her lungs and passing the joint back to Kareem when a flicker of light in the distance caught Claire's eye. The sky glowed dark pink as if to highlight certain death. But Claire was the only one who ever saw it coming. It was moving fast, at least as fast as they were. Her first instinct was to wrap herself around Anna to protect her, but she doubted it would do any good. It was too big of a gamble. Claire ripped herself from the car and hovered over the roof for a couple of seconds, not knowing what she'd do, or how she'd do it, only knowing that she couldn't die twice. She had to save her daughter. Her initial impact was so powerful it spun the car all the way around, sending the joint, the pop, and Kareem's sunglasses flying through the air. They felt the second impact when the Camaro slammed into a snowbank in the shallow ditch on the other side of the road. Anna screamed from start to finish and screamed again when the train roared past. The two sat facing the road, trying to catch their breath. Kareem was gripping the steering wheel so hard his hands had gone pale. The engine was running, but only their gasps for breath could be heard. Anna cried, "What was that?" "I don't know. A deer, I think. You okay?" "I want to go home. I want to go home right now." Okay. Just help me get it out of the ditch," he said as he opened his door. "I'm calling my dad," Anna said as she looked around for her phone, wishing for once it was charged. "Shit, the joint. Help me find it," Kareem said, turning in his seat. "Oh my God, what if the car catches fire?" Anna cried. They peered into the back seat. "There it is," Kareem said, stretching as far as he could, and emerging with the roach and tossing it into the snow. "Get behind the wheel," he ordered, then got out, slammed the door, and waded through the snow, walking all the way around the Camaro. He kept frowning, bending down for closer inspection and frowning again. "What? What's wrong? Come on, we've got to get out of here," Anna yelled from inside as she climbed into the slippery soda-soaked driver's seat. Kareem ignored her, shivered, and shook his head. He waded around to the back of the car and shouted for her to put it in drive and gun it. "You're okay. Everything's going to be okay," Claire chanted over and over from the passenger seat as she stroked Anna's hair. Anna bawled. She looked absolutely terrified. Her black lipstick was smeared across her porcelain cheek, and black mascara tears ran down her throat. "I don't know how to drive," she screamed at the top of her lungs. "I'm all high. We're stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. Everything's all sticky. It's getting dark. I don't ever want to see you again," she screamed. "Good," Kareem shouted. "Now hit the fucking gas pedal." "You're damn right it's good," Claire shouted, shaking her fist at him. Anna dropped her hands from the wheel and her foot from the gas. She covered her face with her hands and cried even harder. "I want my mom. I want my mommy." "Fuck," Kareem shouted as he waded through the snow and opened the door. "Please stop crying. Would you just fucking stop crying?" Claire wanted to slap him silly, but she was completely exhausted. She'd already decided what little energy he had left was going to be spent comforting Anna. Kareem crouched down in the snow next to the door and was shaking his head. "This is such bullshit." "You think?" Anna shouted in his face. "I mean," he said, nearing the end of his patience, "whatever hit us hard enough to spin us around like that, it didn't do any damage. Not a scratch." He shivered again and looked around nervously. "Get over. Move. I need to warm up a minute." "Jerk," Anna said, sniffling and climbing back into the passenger seat. "Shut up, would you?" A pair of headlights shone through the car. A pickup truck had slowed down. "You folks okay? I got a tow strap in back," the driver called out. "Yes, sir, that'd be great." "I was starting to think we might freeze out here," Kareem said, his demeanor changing instantly as he got out of the car, slammed the door, and plodded up the snowbank. Julia grimaced as she sipped her herbal tea. "What I wouldn't give for just one little caramel macchiato. This crap tastes like furniture polish," she muttered to herself and tossed the remainder of the tea over the railing of the small deck. Enormous green fronds formed a virtual wall around the deck, and a natural canopy as well. She loved it. The listing had described it as a modest mountain house, but Julia felt she'd finally found the secret treetop hideaway she'd always begged for as a girl. "I always knew I'd have to get it for myself." She'd paid only $40,000 in cash through a friend a year ago. Julia shuddered as she remembered the small suburban library where she'd sat between a teenage girl picking scabs and an old man with a smoker's cough. She'd first drooled over the photos of her beloved bird's nest on an old finger-smudged computer screen. It had seemed too good to be true. Nestled in the mountainside of the eastern shore village of Santa Catarina, Brazil, minutes from the beach, an outdoor market, and a few mom-and-pop stores. When she'd arrived in the village, she'd fully expected to find a ramshackle cousin of the dreamy hideaway. Instead, she had found it to be even better than the listing had indicated, with pretty orange curtains and not a single neighbor in sight. She was protected from the world. This was her reward for having the patience to carry out her complicated retirement plan over several years' time. Julia leaned back into the rustic wood bench. She propped her swollen feet up on the matching sturdy table and looked around, trying to recapture the excitement she'd felt when she'd first arrived. Inside, 2 rooms were simply furnished with more dark primitive furniture, a bed with a hand-woven fuchsia spread, a nightstand, a set of floor-to-ceiling shelves which served as a closet, a table with 2 chairs, and a small kitchen area with a mini-stove and fridge. Even though she'd lived in a spacious luxury high-rise in Chicago's Gold Coast for the past few years, her heart had leapt at the sight of the simple decor. She'd found it soothing after her escape plan had grown inordinately complicated during the last few months of its execution. By the time she'd fled the country, she'd feared she'd keel over from a heart attack right on Signature's tarmac and never even make it to her friend's Falcon. She'd surrounded herself with the best of everything for years. Designer clothing, furniture, jewelry, gadgets, you name it, she had it. Yet strangely, nothing had ever felt as liberating as walking away from it all, lock, stock, and barrel. No more work bullshit and kissing ass. No more fucking for keys and favors. No more people, period. English speaking, anyway. Leaving the majority of her material possessions behind had been Julia's way of flushing all evidence of that hideous existence right down the toilet. She'd reinvented herself before she'd even landed in Brazil. She loved speaking broken Portuguese and had no intention of improving. It provided a wonderful barrier between her and the locals, as well as the occasional tourist. Her Italian genes and her newly dyed tresses helped her blend into the population on the rare occasion she chose to be part of it. She discovered early on that she could just about get anything delivered to her doorstep by hungry kids for a few measly coins. She preferred dealing with the grimy little beggars over the rest of the locals any day. All you had to do was put a little money in their grubby hand, and they'd disappear. They didn't want to get to know her, and that had made them her favorites by a landslide. It had been so long since anything in her life had been this clean, simple, and uncomplicated. When she'd stepped over the threshold of her tiny cottage, every cell in her body had shouted at once, "Welcome home." But several months had passed. She'd succeeded in leaving all the old hassles behind, as well as accumulating any new hassles, also known as relationships. Now she was bored. Julia had been playing people like pawns since she was a little girl. What did one do for fun once one had flushed all the chess pieces? Her one true friend in life wouldn't arrive for 3 more months. Then she'd be fine, she told herself. And she could handle anything. In the meantime, she had sworn not to turn to the internet to alleviate her boredom. She didn't trust herself to keep things simple and avoid temptation. Manipulating people, while often a pain in the ass, had proven to be the toughest addiction to kick. Tougher than the caffeine and nicotine by a long shot. Today, she couldn't stop thinking about the internet. She'd already bought everything she could locally. The bassinet, blankets, baby clothes, diapers, and toys, and bottles. They were cute, albeit a little cheap. But they'd do until the 2 of them were settled in together, back in their little hideaway. Then she'd shop online like there was no tomorrow. Her baby was going to have the best of everything. My baby. The thought always packed a punch. There was never supposed to be any my baby. All her life she'd believed that what she'd been told by a small town doctor. He'd said her endometriosis was far too advanced to conceive a child, one of the worst cases he'd ever seen. After treating her for another chronic infection, he'd mentioned how adoption could be a wonderful experience. Julia remembered snorting at him cynically. She'd been 15 and relieved as hell she'd never have to worry about birth control again. That had been more than 25 years ago. She'd effortlessly pictured life without children. She'd been adopted, and she wasn't about to repeat the same bogus mistake. This, however, was no mistake. As far as Julia was concerned, she carried a miracle child who would have everything she'd been denied and more. The clothes, the toys, the travel, the world. Lately, she'd been losing herself in daydreams of all the frilly baby things she could buy online from Bloomie's, Macy's, and Baby Gap, not to mention all those gorgeous little high-end boutiques she'd been perusing back in July, when the blue line had appeared on the 6th stick. The urge to cave in and shop online became harder to fight. Her friend Enrique had come through with her new identity, complete with new credit cards she'd yet to use. Julia's head began to throb again at the thought. She massaged her temples and dismissed her daydreams. She still wasn't ready to take any big risks. So much more was riding on her anonymity now. She had someone else to think about for the first time in her life. Her mind drifted to the enormous hospital in Sao Paulo. She knew she'd have to stay in a hotel near the hospital for the last few months of her pregnancy. Time was running out. She'd have to leave her safe little nest soon. There was no way in hell she'd be taking that god-awful boat ride, in addition to the 6-hour bus ride while 9 months pregnant. There was no guarantee she'd even have a seat on the bus. The thought of doing this all at 6 months along was daunting enough. She felt as big as a barn, having grown from a size 2 to a size 10. Admittedly, she'd been too vain to buy maternity clothes and regretted it. The rubber band looped through the buttonhole of her fat jeans had cut into her stomach more with each passing day until she'd finally been forced to buy a few hideous but ungodly comfortable muumuus from the local market. Maybe I should leave for Sao Paulo sooner. It would give me time to get some decent maternity clothes and see an eye doctor. She'd been experiencing blurred vision in her left eye for over a month. It had become quite annoying. Squinting all the time had given her a headache that never seemed to go away. She'd made peace with the fact that she probably needed glasses for now and laser surgery later when the time came to relocate. Of course I need to get to Sao Paulo now. What was I thinking? The sooner the better. What am I so worried about? It's huge. I'll blend. Once I'm back here, I'll blend in even better with the baby. Besides, in Sao Paulo I can buy the rest of the baby's things and have them shipped. A parrot cawed behind her, jerking her back into the present. Annoyed by the intrusion, Julia swung her swollen feet off the table, pushed herself up until she regained her balance, and waddled inside. She stood by the table with her hands resting on her full hips. Today, the mere sight of the 2 chairs on either side of the little table pissed her off. She was lonely as hell, but she was succeeding at weaning herself from men, and in her current state, men didn't seem to mind. Nearly positive she was carrying a baby girl, she had every intention of protecting her from the clueless, bumbling clods. Technically, she'd quit men cold turkey once she'd left Chicago. But she still entertained bizarre fantasies, which were anything but sexual. It wasn't when she fantasized about so much. It was a man. One man. Paul. More than once she'd imagined herself sitting at that crude little table with Paul. Claire's Paul. The end-all, be-all, father of fathers, Paul. The 2 of them laughing about all the cute things the baby had said and done that day. The man was a natural with daughters. Em and Anna were living testaments to the fact. They were polite, intelligent, and downright clever. Real treasures. Not to mention beautiful. They'd never have to go to school smelling like a hoghouse. A day in their life. They'd never have to do a single chore involving an obstinate farm animal. They'd never be teased for being poor and wearing some other kid's hand-me-downs. They'd never have to babysit some smelly little brat just to escape it all. They'd never have to accept advances from a creepy uncle just to get their hands on their first name-brand clothes. Who was she kidding? She missed the hell out of Claire's girls. She wasn't going to waste any more time crying about it. She was going to forget them. Paul was an aloof son of a bitch. He had never stolen a single glance at her cleavage. In fact, he rarely made eye contact with her, which drove Julia crazy. Because it only made her respect him more. Respect him, and hate him. And respect him more. Fuck him. The only decent guy I've ever laid eyes on, and he wouldn't return so much as a glance. What made Claire, with her clean-scrubbed face and comfortable shoes, so fucking special anyway? She'd never managed to unravel that mystery. Claire made so little effort, but she had it all. More love and perfection in her life than any woman deserved. Julia's head was really throbbing now. She did not miss Claire, by God. She didn't give a rat's ass where she was or what she was doing either. In her perfect little house with a perfect little family, piss on her. They sure as hell don't care what Or who or what went down after that. Yet she hoped the fallout had been ugly, and that anyone associated with her had gotten the axe, especially that little bitch Colin. As much as his father loathed him, Julia took solace in the fact that this had surely been the last straw, and the painting princess had been thrown out on his ass. It hadn't been easy weaseling her way between the two of them. Claire and Colin had been so tight. It was some of her finest work to date. She'd naively counted on the lighthouse rule in the beginning, it being illegal in some states for 3 people to live in a lighthouse. Consumed by thoughts of the other two talking about him, one almost always lost his mind. Unfortunately, the bank had proven not to be isolating enough for the lighthouse rule, and Colin had turned out to be tougher than she'd anticipated. Gay men always are. She chastised herself for forgetting this rule of thumb. She would never allow herself to forget it again. Any gay man had surely been through at least as much hell as she had, growing up. They were notoriously formidable opponents, but they also heightened the stakes and made the game more interesting. Colin had never liked her, and that had been the only bone he'd thrown her. It had been easy to call Claire's attention to his tendency towards cattiness, as Julia naturally drew it out with little effort. Unfortunately, he'd spotted this trap early on. His cynicism had become so dark on several occasions he'd actually repelled Claire and driven her right to Julia. After that, Julia had to really keep an eye on him. She was astonished at times that he hadn't pieced together enough of her plan to blow it wide open. If anyone could have, it was Colin. She had no doubt Colin and Claire were together again and tighter than ever, but at least it was in the unemployment line. What if my baby's gay? It hadn't occurred to her before. Whenever the thought had crept into her mind that she might be carrying a boy, she'd shuddered and resolved to raise a decent, proper, respectable man, if that were the case. A new breed was needed anyway. Aside from Paul, they could do away with the whole damn lot of them and start fresh from scratch. She'd never even caught him stealing a glance at her legs. She was invisible to no man, not even the fags. She dressed too impeccably, and Paul had simply been trying too hard to hide his attraction, she reasoned. It didn't matter now. That was her old life, long since discarded. If she ended up having a gay little boy, she'd just mold him into someone so polished, cool, and calculating, even Colin would be impressed. You don't miss a damn one of them, so get over it and get back to your list of baby names. Maybe try writing them out, see how they look on paper. She searched for some paper and a pen, and nearly fell to her knees in pain when she bent over to look beneath the bed. Her head was pounding as she pulled herself up and shuffled into the tiny bathroom, with its simply tiled walk-in shower. It was the only decadent feature in the place, and now she wished it were a clawfoot bathtub. She was sweating, and would have been able to sit in cool water up to her neck and soak all her frustrations away. She knew being upset wasn't good for the baby. My baby.